The dirt under their feet still felt cool that February morning, even though the air outside had turned soft and wrong. Old man Caldwell had walked down into the dugout behind the house the way he always did after a stretch of mild days. Lantern held low so the light would not bounce off the walls. The bins of turnips and the shelves of canned goods looked exactly as they had when the hard freeze set in back in December. No mold showed on the jars. No slime ran down the sides of the potato crates. The air carried that clean earth smell he trusted. He pulled a few carrots for the noon meal, wiped the dirt off on his trousers, and carried them up to the kitchen. By the time the third day of the warm spell had passed, the whole family was eating from those same stores. By the end of the week, the children were sick and the mother could not keep food down. It was not the weather that hurt them. It was not any animal that got inside. It was the myth that a damp dirt floor was always safe as long as it looked clean and smelled right. My name is Rufus Red Harlan. I am 7th generation on this holler in the Ozarks. My grandfather raised me after the hard years and made me copy every rule about cold storage into a leather journal before he passed. He walked me through the same dugouts and springhouses that had fed this family for more than 100 years. And he showed me the places where the dirt floor itself became the enemy. I am going to walk you through every piece of the real method, the way the old men actually did it, including the one step that was quietly taken out of the books. This knowledge did not fade because it stopped working. It faded because people stopped looking close enough at the ground under their feet. Subscribe not for me. Subscribe because the buried cold storage skills are being brought back into daylight, and the next ones will matter for any family that still puts food away against the winter. There are 6 clear pieces to understanding why a dirt floor can turn against you, even when every other sign looks good. I will take them one at a time the way my grandfather took them with me. The first piece is the nature of the dirt itself. Most people today dig a hole, smooth the floor, and call it finished. The old Ozark families never left the floor in its native state. They knew that the soil under these hills holds more than clay and rock. It holds old root channels, pockets of leaf mold that never fully broke down, and seams of moisture that move even when the surface feels dry. After a warm spell, those seams wake up. Water that had been locked in the deeper layers begins to rise. It does not flood. It seeps. It carries with it the soft smell of earth that people mistake for safety. That smell is not always clean. Sometimes it is the first sign that the floor is feeding the very molds and yeasts that will work their way into the food. The old men tested the floor by pressing a clean board against it overnight and then smelling the board in the morning. If the board carried any sour or sweet note, they knew the floor was active and the stores had to be moved or the floor had to be treated before another day passed. The second piece is the way moisture travels through dirt that looks firm. A dirt floor is not a solid thing. It is a living layer. When the air above it warms even a few degrees, the moisture held in the soil begins to move upward. It does not pool in a way you can see. It films the underside of every crate and every jar lid. That film is thin enough to miss if you only glance. Yet it is thick enough to start the slow work of breaking down the skins of root crops and the seals of glass. Most people now check the temperature of the air in the cellar and stop there. The old families check the temperature of the dirt itself by laying the back of the hand flat against it for a full count of 30. If the dirt felt warmer than the air by even a little, they knew the moisture was already on the move. They would then open every bin and every shelf and let the air circulate until the floor cooled again. Skipping that step left the food sitting in its own slow trap. The third piece is the choice of wood that touches the floor. People today set crates and barrels right on the dirt because it seems natural. The old men never did that without a barrier. They used only certain woods, and they raised every container on short lengths of that wood so that air could move underneath. White oak that had been cut in the dry season and left to season for at least 2 years was the only wood they trusted for long contact. Softwoods and greenwoods pull moisture out of the dirt and hold it against the food. Even seasoned oak will do the same if it sits flat. The rule was simple. Nothing that holds food rests directly on the dirt for more than a single night. Every morning the boards were checked for dampness and turned if needed. Families who ignored that rule found their potatoes soft and their apples spotted long before the true cold returned. The fourth piece is the use of lime and ash on the floor itself. This is the part most modern books leave out or change until it no longer works. The old Ozark method was not a heavy dusting once a year. It was a careful layering done at specific times. After the harvest was in and the floor had been swept clean of every leaf and root scrap, a thin layer of wood ash from clean hardwood fires was spread evenly. On top of that went a finer layer of agricultural lime, never the kind meant for plaster or for quick chemical work. The 2 layers were then worked lightly into the top skin of the dirt with a wooden rake so that they became part of the floor rather than sitting on top of it. This combination did 2 things at once. The ash drew excess moisture, and the lime slowed the growth of the molds that thrive in damp earth. The ratio was always the same, 1 part lime to 3 parts ash by volume. Too much lime and the floor became powdery and the air turned sharp enough to affect the taste of the food. Too little and the moisture returned within days of the first warm spell. The treatment was repeated only when the smell test failed or after a period of unusual warmth. Doing it more often wasted material and risked changing the character of the dirt in ways that hurt more than they helped. The 5th piece is the timing of the weather windows. A dirt floor does not respond the same way in every season. The old men watched the sky and the ground together. After the first hard freeze of late fall, the floor could be trusted for weeks if the air stayed cold. But any stretch of 3 or more days when the daytime air rose above 40 degrees Fahrenheit and the nights stayed mild was a danger window. During those days, the floor had to be checked morning and evening. The bins were opened. The jars were wiped. The boards under the crates were turned. If the warm spell lasted longer than 5 days, the entire store was examined by smell and by touch. Roots that felt soft or carried any off odor were removed at once and used or fed to the animals. Leaving them in place invited the trouble to spread. Most people today wait until they see mold or until the food tastes wrong. By then the damage is already done and the rest of the store is at risk. The old rule was to act while the floor was still only beginning to change. The 6th piece is the honest limit of the method. A treated dirt floor is not magic. It will not save food that was already damaged before it went into the cellar. It will not hold against a flood or against a long period of warm rain that saturates the ground from above. It will not replace the need for proper airflow or for careful selection of the food itself. The families who succeeded understood that the floor was only one part of a larger system. They accepted that some years the weather would force them to move stores early or to use them faster than planned. They did not expect perfection. They expected the floor to give them time, and they used that time wisely. When people treat the dirt floor as a complete solution, they set themselves up for the very losses the method was meant to prevent. All 6 of those pieces work together. Skip any one of them and the floor that looked safe becomes the quiet source of the problem. The Caldwell family skipped the smell test on the boards and the weather window checks. They trusted the clean look and the familiar earth smell. That trust cost them half their winter stores and left the children weak for weeks. The same pattern has played out in hollers all through these hills whenever the old steps were set aside. The complete system for handling dirt floors and every other part of traditional cold storage is collected in the Ozark Cold Storage Codex. Over 100 pages. $19. The $19 price is only for the first 300 copies. After 300 copies, the price rises permanently and never returns. The link is in the description below this video. Now we return to the last critical step that separates the families who ate through winter from the ones who did not. That final step is the daily discipline of the floor itself during any period of uncertain weather. After the lime and ash are in place and the wood barriers are set, the work does not stop. Every morning during a warm spell, the floor is walked. The hand is pressed to the dirt in at least 4 places, one near each wall and one in the center. Any spot that feels warmer or damper than the others is marked with a small stone. Those marked spots receive an extra light dusting of the same ash and lime mixture, worked in with the edge of a wooden paddle. The boards under the crates near those spots are lifted and turned so the dry side faces the dirt. Every jar on the lower shelves is wiped with a clean cloth that has been dampened only with pure water and then dried. Nothing is left sitting in the same position for more than 2 days when the air is soft. The smell of the floor is checked by the board method every evening. If the board comes up clean, the stores stay. If it carries any note of sweetness or sourness, the nearest food is removed and the floor is treated again before nightfall. This is the step that was quietly left out of later books. Writers simplified the method until it became a one-time treatment and a hope that the dirt would stay quiet. The old men never hoped. They checked. They adjusted. They kept the floor under constant quiet watch until the hard cold returned and locked the moisture down again. The ratios matter here as much as the timing. For a dugout roughly 12 feet by 14 feet, the initial layer used 3 gallons of seasoned hardwood ash and 1 gallon of agricultural lime. That amount covered the floor to a depth that disappeared into the top skin of the dirt, without leaving a visible white or gray dust. For the touch-up work during warm spells, only a small handful of the same mixture was used on each marked spot. Using more created a crust that trapped moisture instead of managing it. The wood for the barriers was always cut in late summer, when the sap was low, stacked off the ground under a roof for 2 full years, and then cut into lengths no longer than the width of the crates they would support. Soft wood was never used, even for temporary props. The smell test was never skipped. A man who could not trust his nose had no business putting food into a dirt-floored cellar for the winter. These are the honest limits again. The method works only when the food goes in clean and dry. It works only when the air can move. It works only when the family is willing to walk the floor every day the weather turns soft. It will not protect against a cellar that floods from surface water. It will not save roots that were bruised at harvest. It will not turn a poor location into a good one. What it will do is give a family the longest possible window of safe storage when the ground under their feet is managed the way the old men managed it. Families who followed every piece ate through the hard winters with stores that stayed sound. Families who trusted the look and the first smell lost what they had put away and sometimes paid with their health. So here is what I want you to do. First, walk whatever cold storage space you have and press your hand to the floor in several places. Note any difference in temperature or dampness. Second, if you keep food on the floor, raise every container on seasoned hardwood boards so air can move underneath. Third, prepare a small amount of the ash and lime mixture using 3 parts clean hardwood ash to 1 part agricultural lime and keep it ready for the next warm spell. The total material cost for a typical dugout is less than the price of a single bag of store-bought potatoes. Fourth, begin the board smell test every evening when the weather softens. Leave a comment and tell me what the floor felt like under your hand or what the board smelled like after a night on the dirt. I read every single one of these. The complete system is waiting in the Ozark Cold Storage Codex. Over 100 pages, $19. The $19 price is only for the first 300 copies. After 300 copies, the price rises permanently and never returns. The link is in the description below this video. Keep the floor under quiet watch when the air turns soft. That single habit has saved more stores than any other rule I know. The families who ate through the hard winters knew these things by heart, and that knowledge is still waiting for anyone willing to take it back.